Good morning for you who are there already. Good morning, everybody. It's 9 o'clock. I see not everybody is there yet, but I'd like us to make a start. Welcome back. Hope you enjoyed the previous session. I certainly feel less nervous and more relaxed today, so we're going to have a nice structured session. I want to allow burning questions for starters. If there's something that you would like to ask us right away. Otherwise, I'm going to start the session with a portfolio building session. But I see our first hand is raised. Rian is going to tell me what the question was. Sorry, the hand's gone again. Right. Can I just have to see that I have people live, some waves or some raised hands, just to say good morning, please?
Good morning, Melinda. It's Nikki.
Thank you, Nikki, so that I don't feel like I'm talking in a vacuum. Welcome back, Nikki, and all the rest of you. Today I'm going to name names, but not for starters.
Thanks, Melinda.
Thank you. Guys, I'm going to actually ask Rian, for starters, just to go through the raise your hand practice again, just so that you feel a little bit more comfortable with the technology. I know it is a bit of a mental block or a stumbling thing, but Rian's going to just try and get, just get you a little bit more involved. And it's also going to be good practice for when we start working in the smaller groups. So over to Rian, quickly.
Good morning, everyone. I just want to quickly show you where exactly the Q&A is and also the chat. So your Zoom thing should have at the bottom now over here, you should have a Q&A picture. If you click on that, it will allow you to ask a question either for the whole group or privately. Now, it would be better if you ask to the whole group so we can answer it and everybody will know. Thank you.
Right, let's go. Let me see some raised hands. Even if it's just to say, I'm back and it's spring day and I'm happy and I'm not too cold, even though it's load shedding from 12 o'clock. Please, one question, not from Nikki. Let me get my list. Henry Kemp. Devin, I don't want to pick on you again. Nico de Quilla, are you guys there? All right. Hopefully you'll thaw later in the day. Good. What I'm going to do this morning is a nice, one question.
Okay. So the first question is, what are the main differences between auditors and assessors?
Okay, what is the main difference between an auditor and an assessor? I'm going to throw it back at you guys. Before I give you my version, let me see. Think about it. What is the difference between an auditor and an assessor? You can think broad, general life, or you can think narrow, training and assessment. Let's see. Let's raise some hands. Let's hear some opinions. You can also voice. You don't have to type. Difference between an auditor and an assessor, in your opinion. There's no right or wrong answer. Andreas, Dougie, Ellen, Nicole, any or all of the above? Come on, guys.
Yes.
Right.
We have Dougie here. If you will just unmute his mic, please.
Good morning. I'm going to take a guess.
Dougie, I am so grateful to hear your voice. Good morning. Please
Good
take
morning.
a guess.
I'm going to take a guess, and I'm going to say an auditor is someone that's auditing a process. In other words, he's there to evaluate the process or the specific, like a risk auditor or an auditor doing a specific job. Where to, in my opinion, an assessor is more than that. He's not there just to audit the process. He's there to train and learn as well.
I like that. I like that. Thank you. Thank you very much. So what we're saying is that an auditor is more almost a legal term or a more official thing. Although an assessor is also an assessor, an auditor of competence, if you like, there's more of a humane developmental aspect to it. I like that. Maybe some other tags? Yes?
We have Rowan Olivier as well.
Dankie, Rowan. Please unmute yourself and talk to us. Rowan, we seem to have a problem with you. Skis, Rowan, we'll come back to you. We'll test it just now, and we have Francois as well.
Morning.
Morning, Francois.
In my opinion, an auditor comes basically sees what he has a list of what should be in place and checks that all of that is in place and is done. Assessor is somebody that comes in and see what you actually know about the process.
Like that. Thank you. As I say, there's no right and wrong. I mean, I can also just voice an opinion. Maybe let's try one final comment from the floor, and then I will give you my brief thoughts. Okay, let's let that one go. I agree with what both the speakers said. I think, you know, one can make up whatever thoughts one have about that, but I would say in general, an auditor is somebody, especially if you think of chartered accountants and things like that, who would go into a company and audit certain outcomes of a process, often linked to financial compliance, if you like. And I think an assessor in a similar way also look at compliance issues, but definitely mostly competence issues and competence against specific outcomes that need to be demonstrated and recorded. But in the broader sense of the word, I think you can say an auditor also assesses things and an assessor audits stuff. But it depends on how you use the word. I hope that question is answered. Good. As I said, to preempt some of the questions about portfolio development, I'd like to start this morning by going through the portfolio with you step by step. I'm sure a lot of you have looked at it already and have started some work. I did get some questions which I'm very thankful for. So I'm going to do that with you. Please, I don't mind if I'm interrupted. So if you want to raise your hand, Rian will point it out to me. But what I'd like you to get out is the portfolio checklist at the back of your file. It looks like this. It's probably the front page of your learner pack. Oh, you can't see me. It says Portfolio Assessment Checklist, Conduct Outcomes-Based Assessment. So I'd like you to actually, even if you have to tear it out of your file, I can always email you a new copy. But I want you to have that in front of you. And I also want you to open your files on page 10 of module 6. I think you did that briefly last time already. Page 9 and 10 of module 6 really describes the actual process of what the portfolio should look like step by step. Okay, so please do that, and then I'm going to start with the first point. Right, if you look at your portfolio, you'll see the first point there is cover sheet, point 1. Cover sheet, including name and purpose. Now, your name is your name. The purpose of the portfolio would be an assessment portfolio. So it would be Nikki Moodley, maybe Astral, where you work in Astral, assessor portfolio, or you can put in the full name of the unit standard, conduct outcomes-based assessments. You can put your ID number if you like. You can even put a photograph of yourself if you like. It's one way of me actually knowing what you look like, since I can't see you now. Remember, even though this training is online, you're going to actually all have to put together hard copy portfolios still, and in some way it will be delivered to our offices in Randburg, or we will collect it. So you still need to put together an actual hard copy file of assessment evidence. Point 2, contents page. Like any book has a contents page, your portfolio will also have a contents page so that I can see what is where. And if you look at your file, you can see there it describes everything. If we look at module 6, page 9 and 10, the cover sheet, it says there your name, ID number, standard you're being assessed on, and then point 2, where we are now, the contents page, says title of each section with page numbers, etc. So that's the content page. You will probably do that at the end. Then point 3. It says registered standards or qualifications you are claiming. And when you look there in the comments section of the checklist, it says conduct outcomes-based assessment. That is the actual assessor standard. It is a CETA requirement that you put in that assessor standard, the one that you want to become a registered assessor. So that standard needs to be part of your portfolio, or the unit standard. That one you will find in module 2. It's like about a 10-page document. It very specifically lists the outcomes of the assessor unit standard. It starts with the specific outcomes, plan for assessment, conduct the assessment, etc., as we did on Wednesday. And it then describes the whole process of what you need to do and what you need to understand and how you need to assess. So that whole thing you put into your portfolio. You take it out of the file, or you make a copy of the internet and you put the actual unit standard for assessors right in front as point 3 of your portfolio. Is everybody clear on that? So this one is not the one of what you're going to be assessed. That's a space that we will get to later. So it's not about the chickens. It's about you as an assessor, the how you will do your assessment. Okay. Then point 4, you just put in for me your CV. It can be a long CV, a short CV, it doesn't matter, plus a certified copy of your ID. The CETA is quite strict about copies of IDs and qualifications, unfortunately, needing to be certified. So if you can have it certified, please do for me. And you put that then as part of point 4. One of the reasons you do this is if you go and get registered as an assessor with your own CETA afterwards, they will also ask all these things of you. And it's one way of actually preparing for it already now, and you have it all in one place, ready to submit to whoever wants it. Okay. Point 5, that then is copies of relevant qualifications which you have achieved. So in other words, me as Nikki, if I studied after school and I did A, B, and C, and then I did some in-house training with Astral, all the certificates that you have handy that you want to include, they're your personal qualifications. So it's not the learner you're going to be assessing certificates, it's your Nikki or Devon or whoever's qualifications that they've achieved. So you put that in there as well. Try and get them certified. If they're not all certified, there's no legal requirement to submit your certificates for me. So, but try and get them certified if possible. Okay, we can just stop there because this is the personal requirements up to now. Is there any questions? Anybody want to raise their hand, ask me something at the moment? Right, let's carry on. Often when I describe portfolio development, I talk of the portfolio as a sandwich. Points 1 to 5 is the top slice of the sandwich. Point 6 and 7 is the actual filling. So that's the most important part of the portfolio. Point 6 and 7, the filling, and then points 8 to 10, that is just the bottom slice of the sandwich again. So we've covered the top slice of the sandwich, which all relates to you as a learner or a candidate assessor. Point 6 and 7, that's the meat, the filling. That is where you're going to show me evidence of your competence as an assessor. So you're going to go away afterwards, after this training, and start building your portfolio in the workplace. So you're going to start finding guinea pigs, start looking for a unit standard content that you're going to be assessing, inviting them, etc. Now it's all that actual examples of how you planned for and followed through on an assessment. This is what we put in point 6 and 7. Point 6 is almost the content section of the evidence part, which you'll find in point 7. This one is sometimes a little bit tricky to understand, but if you look again back to your assessor file in module 6, you'll see there at the bottom of page 10 is a very clear example of what an evidence matrix is. It can be in various formats. We have found over the years the easiest way to do it is the way I've laid it out for you in this table on page 10. It's a 3-column table where in the left-hand column, you just list the outcomes of the assessor standard. That document in module 2 that you've put in under point 3 of your portfolio now is where you list the outcomes that you're going to have to tell me that you are competent on, you can do. So you can see there, it's just listed outcome 1 to 5, starting with the first one, the theory part, demonstrating understanding, then prepare, conduct, feedback, and review. Okay, so you just literally copy the outcomes, the specific outcomes of the unit standards into the table. The second column is what document you're going to put in to show me that you are competent on that particular outcome. Okay? So here you name the documents that you are going to put into the portfolio. The first one there, you can see, you can almost just copy that evidence right as they are there. The first one there that's listed is a knowledge test or a knowledge assessment that we're still going to provide you with. And then also a structured interview. That is something that I do with you one-on-one. We'll probably do this telephonically or via Zoom or something after you have handed in your portfolio. It's one way of checking that the portfolio is actually your own work, that it is relevant, current evidence produced by an individual. So it's one of the ways of checking that the assessment principles are being met when I assess you. Okay. The second one there you can see, and these are just examples. So whatever you put in to show me that you can prepare for assessments, you will list your documents there. Assessment plan, I had as an example, venue booking, invitation to be the assessment. It can be anything. It can be logistical arrangements, whatever documents you put in, that's going to show me that you have prepared for your assessment. Okay. That will include the assessment plan as well, that we will look at today in a bit more detail, how you put together an assessment plan. Right. Point 3 is where you list your actual 2 assessment tools that you've used to assess your learner. Remember, we said we were going to do 2 assessments, 1 practice, 1 theory. That is where you actually put in the document, the proof that you've done it. So this will be a completed and assessed checklist or a interview answer sheet or a knowledge assignment, answers graded, etc. So that's where you will put in your completed assessments with your 2 learners signed by all parties. Okay. Then you look at point 4. After the assessment, remember we said it's vital to give the learner feedback, and you have to record that feedback so that it's evident that you've given the learner proper developmental feedback, not just yes, you passed, or no, try again later. Okay. And then finally, like all jobs, you have to sit back afterwards, review, reflect. And here you have to then reflect on this specific assessment. So the final step of your 5-step process is to reflect or comment on those 2 assessments that you've done. Did they work? Didn't they work? What would you do differently? Also, what the learner thought about the assessment. Remember, review is a process that can happen in a number of ways. It can be a self-review, the assessor reviewing his or her own assessment, the learner reviewing how they felt about being assessed. It can be co-assessors, the moderator, line managers, etc. You can just do review from 1 or 2 perspectives to show the seater that you know how to actually reflect on your own practice as an assessor. Right. That's the first 2 columns of the evidence matrix. The third column would then simply be where I can find that. So it will be section, depending on how you number your portfolio, how you structure it, it'll be section A, B, C, page 1 to 2, however you choose to structure that. Okay. Questions on the evidence matrix? I want you to be clear, and I want you to almost, again, close your eyes and see that you'll be able to put together with a group of people or on your own an evidence matrix. Sorry, let me just check what Rihanna is saying. Can you hear me, Rihanna? Okay, don't worry. Right. If there's no questions, let's move on to point 7. This is where you're now actually going to just file the documents that we've just spoken about in point 6. So you'll start with the assessment plan, for example, what kind of documents you use to prepare your candidate, your actual 2 completed assessments, record keeping, whatever records you use. Remember, all these documents that you put in are also documents that you will file as record and as proof that you've done these things. Feedback and review, as we said. Okay. Again,
So, sorry, Melinda.
Nikki?
I just want to make it clear. Section 6 is really like sort of like a contents page of the evidence that you're submitting in section 7.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because it almost looks like a duplication if you don't understand that.
It is, and it can sometimes be a little bit confusing. You know, it's just the way that we've developed over the years. And often it makes perfect sense to me because I've seen it for 20 years. And sometimes it's a bit tricky, but I normally say to people, think of it as a contents page. This whole portfolio checklist is actually a list of what you need to put in. Point 2 is the contents page, literally also just listing the sections. But then the importance of the evidence matrix is that it helps the learner as well as the assessor to just make sure that they've covered all the outcomes in the unit standard. So no matter what portfolio you'll be developing, there will always be an evidence matrix where you list the outcomes that you're going to demonstrate competence in, and you tell us which documents up front you will need and you will need to generate, and then where you actually put in the documents in the right order. It is a bit of a duplication.
So it's like a checklist.
Yeah, it's a checklist.
It's like a checklist, basically.
It helps the assessor. It's actually more important than the contents page. Because it's easy then, especially if you look at larger, big portfolios, what we call multi-purpose, then it's very easy for the assessor to check up front, has the learner provided all the evidence, and it's also a self-check for the learner.
Okay, thank you for clearing that, Melinda.
I'm glad you asked the question. I have another question.
This one's from Country Fair, and it asks, must you cite your references clearly?
Must you cite your references clearly? The answer is no. I don't think so. I'm not exactly sure what you mean, but it's not like a theoretical research project. So it doesn't matter really whose assessment tool you use. Look, if you use a copyrighted instrument, but I would say no. Don't worry about listing references. Just list your documents. If it's one that you developed yourself, then that be it. Or if it's one that you got off the internet or one that you got from the training center. But no, it's not like a theoretical research assignment where you list references. I hope I understood you correctly. Okay. Rian, jy kan die slides afhaal as jy wil. Okay. Right. I'm going to move on then to section 8. Supplementary evidence. That's the only section in the portfolio that you can skip if you want. You don't have to put anything in there, but it is, if you want to put anything more in that I might find useful, or, you know, people sometimes use this to put in letters of satisfied customers, if there's a specific achievement that they have in their lives, if you were the employee of the month, stuff like that. So whatever you want to put in there, you can put in there. I would also suggest that if you want to, you can put some formative assessments in this section. Formative assessments, those are basically the exercises that you will find in your file. Normally, we don't ask for copies of those, but because this is an online process, I think it's safe for you guys, if you do work through the portfolio together or the file together, if you do some of these exercises, you just include them. You can either include them there, or you can even just scan them in and send it to us. It doesn't have to be hard copies. We will ultimately also have to scan things in and send it to the CETA. They're not going to come physically to our site to visit. We're going to do this distance-based. So supplementary evidence, whatever else didn't fit in anywhere else. It can be, yeah, as I said, whatever. The exercises can be there, or it can be emailed to me or scanned. Then the last one is a self-review, point 9. You will find a checklist at the back of your file as well in your learner pack. Let me just show it to you. It looks like this. It's a SWOT analysis. That's basically where, similar to the last outcome of the Assessor standard, the review, here is where you reflect a little bit broader. After you've done the assessment, or the process, after you've been through the training, after you've done the portfolio, assessed your learners, you now have to sit and think for yourself. Where do I rate myself now as an assessor? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What are areas that I can still improve on? And here you look not only at the specific outcomes of the unit standard, you look at the embedded knowledge outcomes as well, the theory that you base your practice on, as well as the critical outcomes that we mentioned the previous time. If you can remember back to things like working in teams, communication, seeing the world as a set of systems that work together, those kinds of things you now rate yourself on. And there is a space where you can then do a little narrative in terms of your strengths and weaknesses as well. It's a 2-page document. It's a requirement of the CETA that you do a formal review of yourself as an assessor. We provide the checklist to assist people. Often we say, if you don't want to do a checklist, you can just write me a little narrative saying, after I've been through this training, these are my thoughts. This is the opportunities I see for myself. These are some of the challenges we face, etc. Goodie. That's the portfolio for you. Questions? Okay. What I'm going to do now, excuse me, what I'm going to do now is allow probably about let's take a 10-minute break. I'm gonna give you a 10-minute break. I want you though to just consider some starting thoughts about the development of the portfolio, the process. We're going to do it in teams, or you're going to do it in teams with my help, but just start thinking a little bit about how and what and how you see yourself putting the portfolio together. But let's take then a break from the camera, 10 minutes. We'll be back at Riyadh. Time check. Oh, Nikki has a question. Nikki?
Sorry, Melinda. I was just trying to think ahead, okay? So this portfolio of evidence, this is obviously what we're doing because we're getting trained by you. So when we go back to our sites, and let's just say I do an induction training, am I required to get this sort of thing from the people I've trained, or how does that work?
Okay, it doesn't matter. You can, it's always ideal to get it by using real learners. So in other words, if you do the induction training, there will be some form of assessment taking place afterwards. And you will then follow this process with real learners. That is the easiest way properly to do it. But if you don't have real learners, you can also simulate it. But I suspect that with you guys who are all in training, it'll be easier if you follow the process with actual learners. This is what we're going to really start unpacking, I think, when we start working with the smaller groups, because I think the situations and the scenarios will differ from group to group. So, but the idea is that you do this with real people and you actually take them through this process.
Okay, no, I understand that part, right? We're going to do that as part of our portfolio of evidence.
Yes.
My question is like, for example, now I'm trained, I've got the certificate and Melinda's gone. I'm now qualified to do this assessment. Now I go back to my site and I'm training all of my guys on an induction program or whatever.
Yeah.
Am I required, are they required to do this portfolio of evidence for the auditor that Astral appoints as well? Or do we have other documents to show competency there? I'm just
No, are you
one step
talking
ahead.
about the learners actually that you're going to work
Yes,
with?
yes,
No, not
yes.
at all. No, they
Okay,
will
all right.
it's a good question, thank you. They will do what they need to do to prove their competence. Remember, this portfolio is about assessor competence. Those learners will be demonstrating other types of competences around your core business. So they will have to, the portfolio in itself is an assessment instrument, a tool. I use a portfolio that maybe will explain it. Me, Melinda, assessing assessment, use a number of tools. The main one is the portfolio of evidence. But I also use a knowledge assessment on you guys. I also use a structured interview on you guys. I can even do a simulated assessment feedback session. So those are 4 typical tools that I use when I assess assessment competence. When Nikki or Devin go back, they will assess health and safety competence. That's what your induction. So their tools will have to fit the purpose of seeing if a person can fight a fire. So you don't really need to, you could put together a portfolio of firefighting expertise, but it would be much more appropriate to do an actual demonstrating of fighting a fire or cleaning out a chicken coop or whatever. So it would be the appropriate tools for the outcomes of that unit standard.
Okay, I'm clear now. So just so that I haven't confused everybody else,
it's
the portfolio of evidence is for us to do now. And when we go back and train, then we can use our check sheets that we have in place already, or we can use our planned job observation checklist, whatever we find that we can use that's suitable in the workplace.
It's just another tool. It's a way of gathering evidence. And we're going to look at a number of those tools today in module 4. I think that will help as well.
Okay, thank you, Melinda.
No, that's perfect. Okay, let's if there's anything else, otherwise I'm going to start the 10 minutes now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. It's 25 past now.
50.
Okay, 10 minutes from now. Thank you. I'm back.
Hi, Melinda. I'm back too.
Thank you, Nikki. There was a question. I typed a brief answer, basically asking me to explain point 3 of the portfolio checklist again. Again, it's one of those things where you, it's easy to get confused. The standard they're talking about under point 3 is what your portfolio is about. So in this case, it's an assessor portfolio. If you were on moderator training, it would be a moderator portfolio, so it would be the moderator standard. If you are part of the induction training and you are asked to put together a portfolio of evidence as a learner about health and safety practices, for example, it would be the health and safety practice standard. But it's the standard that you're claiming. In other words, that you're going to get a certificate for. I'm going to show you, excuse me. This is an example, it's very small, but this is what you're going to be receiving as a result of my assessor training, an assessor certificate. So you put under point 3 the assessor unit standard. As I said in my answer, the content, the what you're going to be assessing will be part of your actual assessment evidence. That will be under point 7, and that will be, in this case, your 2 learners, your 2 guinea pigs that you're going to assess afterwards. It will be the standard describing the outcomes of what you're going to be assessing them on. Fighting a fire, raising a chicken, selling a product, those kinds of things. Okay, is everybody clear? Good. What I'd like to do now then is a little bit of a theory session, just to carry on from where we left off the last time. And it's going to be about the roles, the different roles in the assessment process. Just to clarify a little bit for you, you will find that starting on page 13 of module 2. So I'm going to give you just a minute or so just to get to the right page. It is point 4, assessment roles, and it is on page 13 of module 2. Okay. Right. There are different roles in the assessment process. Like any other ETD responsibility that you have in your job, the assessment process also is divided up into a number of different roles. And often the assessor will play more than one of these roles. The first one there you see is called an advisor, literally giving advice about assessment. That's basically what I'm doing now to you guys as well. When I explain to you how to put together your portfolio, or when you as an assessor will explain to your learners how they will be assessed and what they need to bring, that's giving advice about assessment. And there is a unit standard for that as well, although it's not one that we very often see people getting on its own, but it's one at level 4. It's called an assessment advisor. Sometimes it's called an evidence gatherer. But if you're an advisor, you are not allowed to do formal assessments. It's just one of the roles in the process. Okay. The next one is what we're here for. That's on the over the page. The assessor. We like to say an assessor supports lifelong learning through assessment. It's what we said early this morning as well when we compared the assessor and the auditor. It's really a developmental process where you as assessor need to support a learner to the point where they are ready and want to show evidence of competence. So that's the assessor unit standard, and that's the one that we're doing this week. And that's also the one that you will include under point 3 of your portfolio, the actual assessor standard at NQF level 5, called Conduct Outcomes-Based Assessment, and it's worth 15 credits. That's the currency, the value that is added or attached to that unit standard, 15 credits at NQF level 5. So it's a post-matric qualification. Next step in the process, the moderator. So I always say it's like the supervisor of the assessors. It's the moderator's job to make sure that the assessors are enabled and are supported and are doing the right kinds of things. That is a unit standard at NQF 6. So it is equivalent to a first degree at varsity, and that is worth 10 credits at NQF level 6. You can also only become a registered or a qualified moderator after you've been trained and found competent and practiced for a period as an assessor. So you can't actually just become a moderator because you are going to support other assessors and supervise other assessors. You have to go through that. It's one of the SACRA requirements that you have to go through the steps. First you become an assessor, and then you can become a moderator. It's also the role of the moderator or a mentor, if there's no formal moderator, to assist new assessors like you guys now, when you go away after this and work on your portfolio. Ideally, there should have been trained moderators in the company who have been through this before, who can assist you. But again, remember, it's just a role. So even if you are not a qualified or competent or trained moderator, the principles stay the same. You as a senior HR practitioner with, sorry, I've lost my word there, with experience in assessing learners can assist a new person who needs to put together a portfolio of assessment evidence. Okay. Then the next step in the process, and the final one, is called the verify. Let me just see if there's a question. Sorry, I forgot to change my slides. Apologies, guys. There's the moderator, internal quality assurance. And then the next step is the verifier, the external quality assurance. That is the one coming from the CETA. In Astral's case, both your internal and external quality assurance is out. Well, the internal quality assurance officially is outsourced at the moment. That does not mean that internally, as I just said, there can't be a process of guiding and monitoring and coordinating assessments in the company. There's going to have to be some sort of coordination, like I'm sure there already is, in terms of what happens on the different sites and the different divisions with regards to assessing new learners after induction. Okay, so that level 7 one, there used to be a verifier standard at level 7. It was actually discontinued many years ago because SACWA said there's no real difference between internal and external quality assurance. It's checking the checker, basically, the external quality assurance, and that happens from in your case, AgriCETA. They will perform external quality assurance or external moderation of your internal moderation process. It used to be called just verification. They now seem to favor the term external moderation over verification for some reason. Good. Those are the 3 or 4 main roles in the assessment process. This training is about the main one, the assessor role. And as a result of this training, each and every one of you will become a registered assessor. You will have earned 15 credits at NQF level 5. What you do with that is up to you. Internally, you're going to assess. Externally, it's yours forever on a personal level. You can choose to build onto that on your own. There are various pathways for trainers to follow. The simplest one is assessor moderator. There are also full qualifications. There's a range of them, starting at NQF level 4, ending up at NQF level 7. The assessor unit standard forms part of the full qualification at level 5. It's called a national certificate in occupation directed education, training, and development practices. Mouthful, mouthful. Shall I repeat it? Occupation directed can be shortened to OD. Education, training, and development can be shortened to ETD. And practices, which can be shortened to P. So OD, ETD, P. Level 5 qualification worth 120 credits. So in other words, a full year of learning. We'll talk about the notional hours a bit later. It's 1,200 hours of learning, bringing it to a 120 credit full qualification post-matric level, NQF level 5. Okay, so that's one of the pathways if you choose to follow this a bit further than just assessor training. Good. You'll see again, there's an exercise on page 14. I'm not going to do a lot of these exercises during the training. We can look at when we get together in the smaller groups, maybe working on some of them, or you can, as you work through the file in your own time, you can do some of these exercises. And remember, I said you can include them. You don't have to include everything, please. There's no minimum or maximum. I would just suggest that if you are working through and you do fill in some of these exercises in some way, just get them to me as well so that I can show the CETA that you did workplace exercises, or as they like to call it, work integrated learning as well during this process. Good. Questions? Carry on. This is just a slide. I'm actually going to leave this one up for a while I talk again. But as an assessor, you have to look at a person in front of you, an individual, and decide whether they are competent or not. And you can't always see everything all the time. But think of it as fruit. Sometimes you just know the difference between a good apple, a really bright, juicy red apple, and one that doesn't look so great. Something to think about. Good. What I'd like you to do now, and it gets reflected on page 17. I want you to go to the back of module 2 and actually look at that assessor unit standard. That's the one that you include under point 3 in your portfolio. Because all unit standards look exactly the same, the format. And I want you to look at that unit standard. You will find it on, I think, around page 25 of module 2, just before you get to the assessment guide. That is the actual outcomes-based unit standard. I'd like you literally just to take 5 minutes to read through it. You won't get through the whole standard in 5 minutes, but just familiarize yourself with the visual of what a unit standard looks like. And remember that the one that you're going to use to assess your learners will look exactly the same from a distance. It'll have the same headings, everything. It's just the content that will be different. So please take 5 minutes. Just have a look at that unit standard, and then I'll take a couple of questions about it afterwards. Thanks. Right, guys, I'm back. There's a very important question on the screen. I'd like you guys to think about it as well. I'm going, oh, sorry, you can't see the question. The question is, how would we know what unit standard ID to assign to an assessment? Very important question. I want all of you to think of it. I'm going to take some ideas from you just now. But before we do that, I'd like to hear if there's any comments or questions about the actual assessor standard that you just looked at. And I'm going to start naming names. I'm sort of looking at Meadow Feet here, and I'm looking at Sergio, I think, spoke last time. So let's look at Karen. Karen Brooks. Karen or Jacqueline Felix? Meadow Feeds. If you can tell me or just say anything about the unit standard that you just read, the assessor unit standard. One thing that you found interesting or you didn't understand. Anybody from Meadow Feeds? Shall I add? Oh, yes, I've got hands. Thank you. Nicole.
Hi, Marlene, can you hear me?
Yes, it's Melinda. Who's speaking? Nicole.
It's Nicole, yes.
Yes, Nicole.
Sorry,
Thank you.
I just noticed here on the front page of the unit standard, and I noticed there's a registration start date and a registration end date.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Vital. Every unit standard lives for 3 years. So one of the things that you need to do as an assessor when you go and assess is make sure that the unit standard you have is valid, that it's not expired. It's often just an admin process. Very seldom do they change the content of unit standards, especially these days. They're all well and truly cemented. But it's one of the requirements when you assess that you don't use an outdated unit standard. Very
Okay,
important.
so once this registration date ends, does that mean our qualification falls away?
No, it means
Okay.
SACWA has to renew the registration. As I say, it's an admin
okay.
process. It's often really just the date, but if you look further, you'll see there's a registration beginning date, there's an end date, and then there's also a last enrollment and a last date to achieve date. Can you see that? There's a whole range of columns there with dates.
Yes.
So it does mean that even if the unit standard has expired and a learner started, and this is for real, you know, if you enroll with a provider just before unit standard expires, and remember this is an outcomes-based process, so it sometimes takes learners longer to complete a process. So it means that even though the unit standard has expired, you still have years to actually complete it. It just means that the provider needs to enroll new learners on a new unit standard. Well, it's not a new unit standard. They just get re-registered every 3 years. At the moment, I think all of the unit standards expire in 2023 or 2025. But you can still carry on studying towards them for a period after that. And just as this assessor one has a start and end date, the unit standards that you will be using also have a start and end date.
Okay, thank you.
Very much for that. So that's a reminder that when you plan for your assessment, one of the things you as assessors need to check is this unit standard still current?
Melinda, I think what I will do is I'll make sure that I get the unit standard that's relevant for us and our whole induction and quality training that we're going to conduct, and I will share it with the group so that they have a copy of it as well.
That's fine. I think that there are 2 unit standards. I actually have the numbers somewhere as well. I can go and get them for you. I also, though, would like as an exercise for it's good to give it to the guys, but I'd also like you guys to just look around and you know, we all have access to Google and the internet, and it relates to this question, how do we know what unit standard ID to assign to an assessment? It's a good exercise just to sit on your phone or sit in your office and Google a topic, you know, a part of the induction training. And here again, you need to give me specific examples, but health and safety or cleaning, I would Google as a person who doesn't know a lot about your business, how to clean out a chicken coop, unit standard. Literally Google that and see what comes out. Or health and safety, unit standard. If you type in the word unit standard, then there will be a range of unit standards popping up. Maybe if some of you are able to do it, I'd like you to just for fun, maybe do it. Google something that you know you're going to train, a statement, a competence statement, or even, yeah. Oh, I see there's hands. Thank you. Is it Jacqueline?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, it's a
Can you
Japanese.
hear me?
I can hear
Yeah.
you. Yeah,
Can you hear me?
I can.
All right. I don't know if I'm on the right line here, but I was thinking of what you said earlier about us deciding what we were going to do. So I work in a laboratory where we
Perfect.
test animal feed. All
Perfect.
right. So I was thinking of if I can use my assessment on my guys in the front on how they would break down the composition of the feed that comes through to us to have it tested on the machines, on the grinders. Am I on the right track with that?
Absolutely, absolutely. You would have to try and let's. Can you Google? Do you have your phone with you at the moment?
Yeah.
Okay, just Google. Try and make that into a simple statement. Testing animal feed unit standard. And
Okay.
see what comes up.
I will do that.
But are you doing it now?
Oh, you want me to do it now?
Yeah. Let's test.
All right, hold on.
Let me use my phone. I'll do it with you. What's my phone? Here?
Okay.
And anybody can Google. Let's all Google. Google a topic and see what comes up. And remember to add unit standard afterwards. Rian's also Googling. Let me see what he comes up with.
Come on, says under animal nutrition agri-SETA.
Ah, good. Did you type the word unit standard?
I did, yes.
And is something coming up or not?
Assessment guide, yeah.
Okay, go see if you can find an actual, that's exactly what you need. You need an assessment guide. It'll explain the whole process.
Oh, I see. This is perfect.
Yeah, I've got one here. It says unit standard title, understand animal nutrition. Unit standard ID 116055.
Yeah, that's the one I've also got, 116055.
Excellent, excellent. Have a look at it, and can you see it looks exactly like the one for the assessor.
Okay, great. So I'm on the right track then.
You are 100% on the right track. There you've got all the specific outcomes as well. It says understand basic nutrient groups.
Okay.
Following correct on-farm storage procedures, etc. So that's
wonderful.
Exactly the kind of thing that you're doing. And Nikki, I appreciate you getting them the right unit standards, but I'd also like them to exactly what we did here. Think of something you're really doing. Remember, it's for you, hey? Remember what I said last time. It's not the tail being the unit standard, wagging the dog here. That's you trying to teach your people in the laboratory the right skills. So think of what you're going to really do, and then find a unit standard that sounds pretty much like the kinds of things that you want to do. And then you still carry on and you do your own thing. Yes, you need an assessment plan, but it needs to be how you're going to do your assessment. Your assessment tool is going to be the specifics that is needed in that laboratory. It doesn't have to link to the unit standard. The unit standard is almost just I want to call it window dressing, because SACWA requires you to be able to use unit standard. It's part of the training that I have to give you. You need to be able to use unit standards when it's required of you, but you're still going to do your own thing first. But for the purposes of the portfolio, you will put that unit standard in, it'll form part of your plan, and then you will test like you've always tested your people using those tools, but you will give them proper feedback afterwards, like SACWA require, and you will also just reflect on how the assessment went, like SACWA requires. And the only time you're going to do that is when you want to award the credits that is linked to that unit standard. So there where we looked at the registration end and start date and the credits, if you actually want to do a formal assessment because you want to give that laboratory learner the credit of the training that they've just gone through. Then you will follow and record and report on the process as SACWA requires. If not, you will just do what you've always done, and it always worked for you. Happy?
Yep, very happy.
Excellent,
Thank you.
excellent.
Thank you.
I'd like you guys to do more of this. I'm not going to put you on the spot now and say look for more, but this is the kind of thing that I want you to do, and what we're going to do when we get together in our small groups to actually develop the portfolios. You'll see it almost becomes fun once you get past the how different this whole thing is, and how confusing it can be, and what is what unit standard. You know, it can actually be a little bit of fun if you start seeing the blocks falling together. Okay. Right. That was very useful. Can I have some more hands, some more comments, please? I've got Andries, it looks like. Andries van der Walt. Morning, Andries. Do you have a question? I'm looking here at Frikkie O'Callaghan. I'm just looking for one or two more questions. There's the CISO from Festive. Jacques Legrancy at General. I don't know if he's there this morning. Vernon, Avril, Beauty from Ross. Come on, guys, help me here. Right, if there's nothing, the reason I wanted you to just, here we've got one. Right, say we want to do forklift training, then we need to do a portfolio for operate defined purpose lift trucks. Okay, let me clarify. If you are talking about just for the purposes of this training, then the answer is yes. If you want to do forklift training for your portfolio, then you need to find a forklift training unit standard. You've got that one there, operate defined purpose lift trucks, ID number 242981. And that is what you're going to use to assess your two learners for the purposes of your assessor portfolio for this training. So your assessment plan is going to be, what tools am I going to use? In other words, am I going to do a theory and a practical? So you can ask him questions about how the lift truck works and what kind of safety checks he needs to do, the learner. That can be your one learner that you assess. And the other learner, you can have a checklist where you will, in practice, check elements of his operation of the lift truck. And that will be your assessment plan, and your two learners that you've assessed on practice and theory of forklift driving, and you would have given them feedback on how they did, and you would have checked, reviewed your process of assessment, and did they feel comfortable being assessed, and that will be your portfolio done. That's the first part. However, Andries, after you finished your assessor portfolio with your two forklift people, I'm now going to give you a unit standard called assessment. So you are now a registered assessor, and you can now assess all other people that you want to assess, but not only on forklifts. It doesn't mean that because your portfolio was on forklifts, now you can only assess forklift drivers. Not at all. You can now assess anybody on anything, provided you can do that yourself. So if you can drive a forklift, you are now registered to assess other forklift drivers. using forklift unit standards. You are also allowed to assess people in the laboratory to assess animal feed using animal feed unit standards, provided that you can assess animal feed yourself. Am I making that clear enough? You can just raise hands, we can do a poll. I just want you clear. Excellent. It's clear to Andries now. So the portfolio that you as a learner are developing here is purely to practice skills to become an assessor. SAQA has a very simple requirement. You can assess anything provided you can do the job yourself. Once you've done this assessor training with me once, it's yours for life, and it isn't linked to a specific sector. As long as you demonstrate competence in subject matter expertise, you can assess in any sector with this same one unit standard called conduct outcomes-based assessment. So if you leave the chicken farming industry and you decide you want to become anything, you can sell insurance, you can become a teacher, you can become a pastor, you can change any job that you want to, and it doesn't have to be in the same area that your original training was. If you gain other technical expertise, you still use this one assessor standard that you were trained on once to assess the what that you become competent in later. I hope that's clear to everybody. Right, I want to do a little bit more theory then. I'm going to change my slide again, and we're going to look at the assessment principles that you will find in my file, page 18 of module 2. When I do this training normally, I say to people, similar like we did with the NQF broad principles in module 1, I'd like you to look at each of these words and just talk to me. And I'm going to ask you again to talk to me, to raise your hands. And I want a couple of inputs, please. When you look at that first word there on the screen, validity, what does it mean to you? Just the first thing that comes into your head, brainstorm. When something is valid in life, what is it? Make a sentence with validity or valid. Nicole.
So how valid your assessment is in your environment?
Yeah, absolutely. Is it valid? So in other words, if you do...
Does it fit in?
Yeah, give me an example, a practical example of what you will do, you think.
Well, we're in animal feed manufacturing, so operating of machinery or also feed sampling.
Okay, so you will have to make... Sorry?
No. Carry on.
You'll have to make sure that the assessment tool itself is valid, you know, that it tests what it says it's going to test. If you are dispersing animal feed, you know, with electronic equipment, for example, that's what you will need to assess when you assess your learners. So you can't expect them to operate heavy machinery, but then when you assess them, you say to them, please show me how you will feed a chicken by hand. If you understand, it's maybe an absurd example, but make sure if it's valid, it must be valid. It must be testing what it says it's going to be. Yeah, it must be valid, it must be relevant, it must be fit for purpose. And you'll see a lot of these principles are very close together and they work together, but make sure that it's valid, that your results are valid, that your tools are valid. Absolutely. Thank you. Let's look at the next one. Oh, there's more hands. Thank you so much. Sebo. Ellen, who's going to talk? Sebo. unmute yourself and then we'll be able to hear you. Let me just see with Rian. Rian, will you come out?
I did. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. What I understand about the validity, no?
Yes.
Validity, I think when you do maybe an assessment, you must check, like if ever you're doing the forklift, if maybe the certificate for that forklift is still valid or what?
Yes.
Will it be used?
Yes.
While doing the assessment, that's what we are talking about.
Absolutely. Well, but what you say is also right. You know, there's a number of things you need to check. Validity of a license, especially with a forklift, those things expire, I think, every 2 or 3 years. So it's definitely one of the things that you need to check. Yes, I fully agree with you.
Okay.
And also, when you assess a forklift driver, if you look at validity from another perspective, you can't really ask him to write you an essay on how he would drive a forklift or how he would change a flat tire. I mean, he will actually have to show you how to change a flat tire. That would be a more valid assessment than actually just asking him to write an essay, and meanwhile he can't actually change the tire.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Does somebody want to tackle reliability for me? We can stay with a forklift example or use another one. How will you know that you can trust? Because that's what, if you can rely on something, you can trust it. How will you know that an assessment of a forklift is reliable? Chris, I see Chris Hansen. Do you want to talk? Francois Solomons? Ellen, you want to give it a go? Okay. We seem to battle with this question. Oh, there we go. Nicole, before doing an assessment, the assessor should know the process first. Absolutely, that's correct.
Maybe I can help a little bit, Melinda. So
Thank you.
when something's reliable, you need to be able to trust it. So
Absolutely.
the thing is, you should be able to trust or rely on who is doing the assessment, whether the assessment is actually valid, because the two tie into each other. Because if it's valid, then you know it's reliable. If the assessor is qualified, you know you can trust it. If the material used to assess the person that you're assessing is reliable or is true, or you can trust that, then you know that the assessment is reliable. Something like that.
Absolutely, 100%. Thank you, Nikki. Absolutely, that's right. The same goes for authenticity, for example. If you look at the principle of authenticity, it's actually an easy one. How will you know that it's the learner's own work, for example?
So if you see them, if you're doing forklift, for example, if you're evaluating a forklift training, then you can take a picture of the person on the forklift, because surely it can't be somebody else driving the forklift.
Exactly, yeah. 100%. So many of these principles are not always easy to see if it's not a face-to-face assessment. But authenticity, for example, as you said, is it the learner's own work? So if I ask you to put together this portfolio of assessment evidence, and you ask your wife to do it, when I look at your portfolio, I'm not really going to know if it was you or your wife who did your portfolio. But by interviewing you while I assess your portfolio or after I've assessed your portfolio, I will get a good idea if you actually understand what you did, if you actually did assess your two learners, if you did plan properly for the assessment. So we as assessors need to make sure that these assessment principles are being adhered to when we do assessments. I want to still try and get some comments from the group. Think of a real assessment that you have to do. If you, for example, have to assess a guy on in the laboratory on animal feed, how you will make sure that your assessment is fair. Think of the principle of fairness. Anybody who wants to talk? I would say being fair is make sure, for example, that all learners are equally prepared, that all learners are getting the same opportunity to present the evidence, but that you not try and be, and looking at the next principle, for example, so flexible in terms of allowing people enough time, and then other people maybe feel that they are treated unfairly. Sorry, I see questions coming through here. Repeat the same test with multiple people, correct? Sorry, I'm just trying to read some of these questions here. Base the assessment on the unit standard for it to be reliable, 100%. You have to assess what you're going to, what you say you're going to assess in the unit standard. Fully agreed. Sorry guys, I'm battling a little bit with the technology of reading the questions here. Okay, perfect. What I'd like you guys to do now, and I'm going to try and break you into small groups. Well, you are in groups already. I'd like you to just take, say, 5 minutes or so, and just talk in your groups about how you're going to apply these principles in practice when you do assessments. Try and think as practical as possible and make sure, or list some of the things that you think you can do to make sure that your assessment meet these principles. In other words, how can you ensure when you assess health and safety standards that you are cost effective, that you are fair? Just pick 1 or 2 examples in your groups, and I'd like you just to discuss how you think you'll be able to ensure that you meet these principles when you do assessments. Okay, I'm going to give you 5 minutes. Right, I'm back. Let's carry on. Remember, the main thing about assessment principles is for each and every assessment that you as an assessor do, you need to make sure that within the context of that assessment, you adhere to these principles. You make sure that your assessments are valid, that you can trust the results, that you are looking at the learner's own work. And fairness, of course, is a given. There shall be no bias allowed in assessment practices. And the role of the moderator also, that we'll look at maybe when we look at the assessment guide, the role of the moderator is also to ensure, one of the roles, that these assessment principles are being upheld when assessments happen. You can't, for example, as an assessor, be so flexible when you assess learners that some learners start to feel they are being treated unfairly. So you always have to work within the ambit of the unit standard. You have to be guided by those assessment criteria in your unit standard when you do the assessments. Cost effectiveness is also vital, especially with a company like you. It's a huge company, and you can't, for example, have just 1 or 2 assessors that frantically fly all over the country trying to assess people to make sure that we are being fair across regions. But in the end, it costs an absolute fortune to try and see everything that every learner does. So you have to be careful in your planning as well. When you plan for your assessment, you need to balance these principles off against each other as well, to make sure that at the end of the day, your assessment result is reliable and is valid, and the assessment was done with fairness, in a cost-effective way, using relevant assessment tools, etc. Okay. Any questions on assessment principles? You will see that when we go through the assessment guide a bit later, there will also be a section for you as an assessor to complete to make sure that the assessment principles have been adhered to. Okay. Let's move to the next slide. There's one more currency. You can't use an outdated assessment standard, unit standard that's already expired. You need to make sure that you have a current unit standard. Sorry. There we go. Let me just say a brief word about evidence. You will find that on page 21 in my file in module 2, 7.1. When you assess, there are different types of evidence that you can look at as an assessor. Often the most easy evidence to see is the direct evidence. So demonstrate to me that you can feed a chicken. Explain to me how you would choose the correct type of feed for a specific breed. That would be indirect evidence, for example, where your learner tells you about what kind of feed he would use, as opposed to physically demonstrating competence in feeding a chicken, which would be direct evidence. And then the third type of evidence that you can gather as an assessor would be supplementary evidence, or evidence from third parties, where you, for example, speak to the learner's supervisor and say, can Johnny feed chickens with appropriate feed at the appropriate times of day? So those 3 types of evidence, direct, indirect, and supplementary evidence, is what you compare at the end of the day, so that you as an assessor can decide whether a learner is competent to perform a skill or not. And if you can briefly think back to the 3 different types of competence that we looked at in the first session. Practical competence, those are the things you do every day in your job, the split decisions that you have to make. Are the chickens stressed? Are they comfortable, etc.? Then the knowledge, the foundational competence that you also look for when you assess. In other words, do they understand that the chickens need to be not stressed in order to feed optimally? And then also the final type of competence where you assess whether if something goes wrong, reflexive competence. If you can make a plan when something goes wrong, what happens if the power goes off, or if there's a cold front, how does the person treat the chickens in that case? And ultimately, when you look at those 3 areas of competence together, practical, foundational, and reflexive competence, once you've assessed that, then you know that this person you've assessed is able to demonstrate applied competence. In other words, this person can react in difficult situation. He knows or she knows what she's doing. She has thorough understanding on which she bases her practice. So this person can truly be credited with the unit standard on feeding a chicken, for example. Okay. Any questions? Right. What I'd like us to do now is look at the first significant outcome of the assessment process, and that is an assessment plan. Remember, you as an assessor will have to plan for your assessment. You have to draw up an assessment plan. And in order to do a proper assessment, you're going to have to plan before you start. And the first step is to decide, and we mentioned, and Nikki mentioned unit standard. What unit standard are you going to use when you do this assessment? And remember, the unit standards only apply when you want to assess those specific unit standards that Astral will be accredited for. I think there are 2. Nikki, maybe you want to jump in. Can you remember exactly what the 2 unit standards are?
Gosh, no, I have no idea. I'm just going to look
I will try
and
and follow
see.
up on that. I think I have it somewhere, but
I'm just checking on Gideon's mail.
It's
if I have it
generic
quickly.
stuff. It's around, I think it's around safety procedures. It's part of the induction training. I'll go find that information for you as well when we take a break again. But it's important to know which standards you're using, just in general. I want to say to you guys, look broader than just unit standards. Look at topics, you know. So forget unit standards when you let your head go now. Just think of what topic, what the content of what I'm going to assess. That's one of the first things that you need to decide. What am I going to decide? And this assessment that I'm doing, is it somebody that I've trained? In other words, is it a program-based assessment? Or is it a recognition of prior learning-based assessment? Now, what that means is a person learned elsewhere. So in other words, I didn't train this person, but I want to see if this person is competent and in, say, selecting the appropriate type of chicken feed. So me as an assessor need to decide who is this person in front of me that I'm going to assess. Okay? Then you also need to look at what types of outcomes. In other words, as we just said, the specific outcomes. What is the detail of this unit standard? If it's, say it is, yeah, let's use selecting appropriate feed. What are the different types of feed? How do you need to store the feed? What needs to be the temperature, etc., etc. So you need to understand the details of what you're going to be assessing that person on. Just getting back to unit standards, there are different types of unit standards that make up a qualification. So for example, you will have a qualification in caring for chickens. One of the unit standards will be making sure the eggs hatch in time. Another one will be making sure they get enough feed. Another one will be making sure they get sunlight twice a day, whatever. So make sure that you understand what the details of the outcomes are and what type of unit standard you're looking at. Fundamental unit standards, those basically mean the kinds of things that you need to understand. It's language and maths, if you can put it that way. So things to do with language and maths, you don't have to worry too much about that category. The next one, core, that's important. Say you're doing a qualification about, caring for chickens. Core would be the unit standards that everybody caring for chickens need to know. So everybody who's going to raise a chicken need to know A, B, C, and D. Where you have a choice though, elective, that's when you specialize. Some people will be caring for a certain breed, others will be caring for chickens that are free range, some will be looking at just hatching the eggs and not really raising the chicken. So you can specialize in terms of your qualification as well. So core basically means everybody wanting to farm with chickens, you need to know this. Elective is where you specialize in different areas of chicken farming. And fundamental are the basic maths and communication skills that you need to have if you want to learn. Those would be the three categories. And you just have to think by looking at the unit standard as an assessor, what is it that you're going to be assessing? Reasons why are you assessing this learner? Remember, the specific purpose of this training is to tell you as Astral how to assess learners when you want to award them specific credits. Okay, those 1 or 2 unit standards that are going to be accredited as part of your induction process, and that every single one of you will have to go through and be awarded in order to go through the formal process of training. That's the only time when you want to award one of those unit standards that you have to go through this specific rigorous planning process and documenting process and worry about what is a unit standard. There are other reasons. I mean, nothing is going to really change in your day-to-day work. I think it's important to remember that. You will also still carry on doing what you've always doing and assessing for the reasons you've always assessed. Performance appraisals is one of them. I'm sure you've done that in your company before. Determining training needs. What other types of training do the people need? You've always done that, I would presume. Feedback during and after training, even if it's just informal questions that you ask of your learners. Those are all things that we do as trainers, as HR, and we'll carry on doing them in the same way we've done before. Recruitment, skills audit, certification. So all the normal HR things that you've done in the past, you will still be doing. It's only when you now assess to award a specific unit standard that you will have to go through this specific process that this training teaches you. Okay. There are just some more purposes of assessment you can see. And if you want to follow in your files, I'm into module 3. The steps are explained there step by step. I'm now around page 7 of module 3. Just if you want to keep going with the file as well. Step 4, it just talks about levels and credits and the different kinds of qualifications you get as part of the NQF. There you can see 1 credit equals 10 notional hours of learning. So your assessor unit standard, for example, as I said to you this morning, is 15 credits at NQF level 5. That means how they work it out, the notional hours. If you didn't know anything at all about assessment, it would take you about 150 hours to learn how to become an assessor. Okay. Right, now at some point, you've got to start writing this plan down. It's fine to sit there and think, oh, I need to do my assessments, I need to plan a bit. But at some point, you actually need to draw up an assessment plan, okay? And that we're going to look at a little bit later as part of our assessment guide as well. But the kinds of things that you need to put into an assessment plan, first of all, you look at the actual unit standard. So the unit standard, the example we had this morning, for example, looking at selecting appropriate chicken feed. Say that's the unit standard. So you will have that unit standard with all the outcomes, which will explain exactly what you need to do in order to feed chickens. That will be the basis of your assessment plan that you need to check when you assess your learner. And then you need to add certain things to this plan. For example, what is that unit standard? You've got that. What type of assessment tools are you going to use? If you want to select the correct chicken feed, how will you assess if a learner can select the appropriate chicken feed? Is it going to be best assessed as part of a structured interview, or will you ask him to demonstrate to you how he's going to do it? So that will determine what tool you're going to use. Remember, your tools also have to be reliable, flexible, current, all those assessment principles that we looked at just now. Your plan also will have to say which types of evidence is acceptable. Remember, we spoke about the 3 types of evidence: direct, indirect, and supplementary evidence. Selecting appropriate types of chicken feed, for example, it would be direct evidence if you actually see the learner feeding the chicken using the right feed. It can also be interview where he tells you, so that would be indirect evidence. You need to decide which tools best to use to check whether the learner understands all aspects of the content of this unit standard. Your plan will also have to involve logistical things. How long will the assessment be? Where is it going to be? When? How the learners will get there, etc. Time, dates, and places. Also, part of your plan will just state which unit standard we're assessing, how many credits, and at what level. So, for example, selecting chicken feed will be 3 credits, so 30 hours, and it will be at level 3, which is more or less a grade 10, 11, grade 11 equal level. Your plan also will have to include when results will be available and how the results will be communicated. Is it going to be direct feedback right after the assessment? Is it going to be done via email later? And the plan also will have to say if there's a process for assessment review that needs to happen every now and then, and if a learner can appeal, if they can complain, if they're not happy with the result of their assessment. In other words, if they feel they weren't treated fairly or they didn't get enough time, etc. So those are all the kinds of things that you need to include in an assessment plan. And we're going to look at an actual example of an assessment plan a bit later today. Okay, shall I just pause and see if there's any questions up to now? Okay, there's 14 steps to the planning process, so I'm going to go through them fairly briefly and then we'll chat again afterwards. Please raise your hands during my talking if you want to ask any questions, otherwise I'm just going to carry on. Assessment tools. Remember, we spoke about the different tools that will be appropriate. Depending on what you assess, you will select the right type of tool. Observing, you can check. Can the person do this? And then you have the elements on your checklists and you'll check off. Oral, where the person tells you or he writes a project for you. And then, yeah, well, that would be the written. So he can tell you or he can write down for you, and that would become indirect evidence, not direct observation evidence. When you pick your tools, you need to make sure that they're appropriate for what you're going to be assessing. Then at a certain point, you come to actually measuring the outcomes. Now, that will be how you do the assessment on the day. You will have to give some thought to that as well. Where it's going to be, who's going to be invited, what needs to be prepared, etc. Measuring the outcomes, doing the actual assessment on the day. You're going to make sure that you are able to record. Do you have the right tools? Do you have the right recording documentation? You will have specific documentation in the company that will be made available to you, and you will have to make sure that those are all properly filled in, etc. Here comes a couple of the assessment principles. The first one, authenticating evidence. How will you know that this evidence is authentic, that it is the learner's own work? It's very easy when you actually observe him feeding the chicken, but when he writes you a whole essay about how the different feeds work and how to select the appropriate feed for the appropriate breed, you will have to make sure that that evidence is authentic by way of an interview after a group project or whatever. But you need to think about how are you going to authenticate the evidence that you have. Reliable evidence. Remember, we spoke about reliability. How can you make sure that you can trust the evidence, that you can trust your assessment tools, that you do get consistency when you assess in KZN as well as in commercial, as well as in the Cape? How do you get consistency, the same results over different groups of people? One of the ways of getting consistency is having trained assessors using reliable assessment tools that are accredited and results are moderated. Those are all parts of the process to help ensure the assessment principles, reliability, validity, etc. There we go, validity, another one. If I want you to drive a forklift, it doesn't really help me to get you to write a 3-page essay about how to drive a forklift. Yes, you can do that, but ultimately somebody is going to get behind the wheel. You'll have to do safety checks. You'll have to see that his license is still valid, and he will actually have to drive the forklift. That's how you make sure that that assessment is valid. You can see him driving the forklift. As I said before, plan how you're going to give your learners feedback. It's very easy when you're right there on the farm, in the chicken coop, and you're doing the work, but it's a little bit of a different story, especially at the moment with social distancing and stuff. We're going to make very sure that after an assessment, we give our learners proper developmental feedback. Okay? And you have to, like everything else, record it because you need to prove afterwards that it happened. You can't just give him verbal feedback without any written backup. Third party, yes, you've assessed the learner. Yes, you've given your learner feedback, but there are other people that also will need those assessment results. The farm supervisor maybe, the line manager, the seater, who else needs to get feedback on the results of that assessment? And then the last one, as I mentioned to you, review and appeal. When you plan, remember this is all still about planning. When you plan, you need to make sure that there will be a check, even if it's the moderator that will review the assessments and make sure that they happen in the right way and that the learners were prepared, that they knew what to bring for the assessment, that the results could be trusted, and that if there were unhappiness, there is an appeals process in place. So your plan has to consider all of these things. Like in a nutshell, is module 3. How to plan for an assessment. And remember, the actual plan on a piece of paper, point 5 of this planning process, that is where you actually write down your plan. And we're going to have a look at an example of an assessment plan in our next exercise after this. Oh, I see there's one step missing. Sorry, there we go. Right, that is very quickly module 3 theory. The outcome of module 3 would be the actual assessment plan based on a unit standard that you've developed. And that is the first significant piece of evidence that you need to create for me as part of your assessor portfolio. You need to have find a unit standard, and based on that unit standard, draw up an assessment plan. Questions? Okay. What I'd like to do now is try and get into more discussion a little bit again. This was now a bit of my theory for the day, but I want to show you now an exact example of an assessment plan. And you will find the assessment plan at the back of module 2. If you can just turn for me to, sorry, you have to turn back to module 2. We were doing module 3 now. In between module 2 and 3, there is an assessment guide. It's a 12-section document, which I want you to have a look at for me. The one in my file says interpret current affairs. Yours might say promoting merchandise or something like that. But it's an assessment guide, and I'd like you to find that guide for me, please. And then I'd like us to look at it in more detail. Can I just have a voice? I feel like I'm talking in a vacuum here. Can I just have 1 or 2 raised hands, please, telling me, yes, we have the assessment guide? Okay, sorry, let me get my glasses back on. Francois. So you've got it, right. Any questions?
Please share with me what page it is on, because I can't find it.
Okay, thank you, Nikki. The assessment guide is actually not a, it's a document. It doesn't have page numbers. It's between module 2 and 3. It is a document with 12 sections in it. Let's maybe just make sure that we all have that. I hope that when the files got put together, this one didn't maybe get misplaced or put in the wrong place. It's the only document in your file that doesn't have numbers. It has 12 sections. So at the bottom, it will say Assessment Guide, Copyright Reserved, page 1.1. Do you have it, guys? I hope it didn't go missing somewhere in the... Oh, here we go. Assessment Guide version 2, Andres. Yes, correct. Maybe if Andres, maybe you can just type for us where in your file you found it. I'm allowing... Sorry, I'm just struggling here with the technology. I want to let you talk. Rian, help me out. Okay, please somebody raise your hand. Andres van der Walt, you want to talk? Fransha Pretorius?
Right, it's if you go to section 2, to module 2, module 2's last page is page 32. Just behind that, then you start the assessment guide.
Correct.
Of section 1.
Perfect. Thank you. So it is in the right place. That's where it should be. I just want to make sure that everybody have it. If you don't have it, listen to me. If you don't have it, if you can't find it, maybe not all of them got copied, please raise your hands if you don't find it. Joseph? Okay. Sorry, people are raising their hand. I think it's the technology that's getting to all of us. They're raising their hands and then they're dropping it again. Ria, come help, Chloe. Are you not finding it, guys? Nikki,
So
maybe
the
you want
guys,
to help?
yes, I found the guys from Festive that share the same file as me. It's under module 8. It says
Okay.
Assessment Guide version 2, 25th of July, promoting merchandise. That's the one we're talking about.
That is the one, yeah.
Yeah, it says 16 credits at NQF level 2.
That is the one, yes.
Yeah, page 1.1. Yeah, okay.
Okay, so it seems some of you don't have it between module 2 and 3. Some of it have it as module 8. Yeah, but that is an example of an assessment guide, okay? Something like that you'll probably be given in Astral. Ah, we've got it at Ross. Perfect, thanks.
The guys at Festive.
Nikki,
Nico
maybe if
and
you can just take over for a second and you know your people, just can you check in a way that they all have it? And if some of them don't have it, we need to then I'm not going to spend too much time on it now, and then we can look at that again tomorrow because it's just an example.
Okay, let's just see. Nico.
Let me also just
The guys
see
at Festive.
yeah, I'm just going to step out.
I'm just going to quickly type them a note and see. Okay, they fine. They've Yusuf confirmed that they have it.
Okay.
They should
Can
be
I
okay.
Just,
Yeah.
Sebo has had a hand raised for a long time. Let me just try and get Sebo to talk. If Sebo still wants to talk.
Yes, Nikki, I can't find it here.
You cannot find it.
In your file, Disable?
No. No, it's not.
No, it will be there. I just don't know how she put your file together. Okay. So is your file got file dividers?
Yes, it does have the file dividers, but I can't find it here. Let me rather ask Beauty and if they have it.
Okay, I'm just going to
Here,
check in
Beauty's
the.
calling me. Let me hear
Okay.
from-
Okay.
Let me hear from Beauty is calling me.
Okay, sure. I'm just trying to see, Melinda, in that pack of documents where it would be.
For those of you who, for some reason, do not have it, if you want to send me an email, I don't know if you have access to email, but if you send me an email to my email address, it's melinda@lpl, MELINDA @lpl. That's learningperformancelink.co.za. That email address should also be on the front cover of your file. Then I can, as soon as we take a break, I can then quickly email the document to you. And we can have a look at it again tomorrow. But it's purely an example. It's just a way of helping you and physically showing you what an assessment plan can look like. That's what I want to do with you now. But so if you don't find it, please send me an email and I'll try and send it to you as soon as possible. It is under section 8 in our file, I see here. It's in module 3, some people are saying. %, correct at the back of module 2. Royalists have it behind module 2. Okay. So it seems most people have it behind module 2, between module 2 and 3. That is where it normally lives in our file. Or then under section 8 or module 8. There's only 7 modules in the program. So it seems like 1 or 2 sections have put it right at the back. So before the learner pack, but after module 7, you'll find it says assessment guide. And it's got 12 sections. So what I'd like to do is start talking through it. Let me just see if I have more questions here.
Melinda, sorry, can we just confirm with Disebo if she's got hers? Because she's the only one now.
Yeah. Disable,
Please.
have you got it?
found it. Yes, I got it.
You've got it. Excellent.
Okay, great. Then we're good to go.
Then we're good to go. Right. The first thing I'd like you to look at is the second page. It says content. Section 2, it says content. So not the cover sheet basically, but the contents one. And you can see there are 12 sections. Okay. Does somebody want to say something, Country Fair? Shall I allow you to talk? No. Okay. So let's carry on. You'll see there are 12 sections. The first one that you need to think about is section 4, the assessment plan. You can almost sit with a pen, and what you need to do for me is an assessment plan. So that's the first one you can mark. I'm going to get in your portfolio an assessment plan. Okay, section 4. We're also going to look at some of the documents in section 5 and 6, because that is where there are examples of documents you can use to prepare your learner. All right? So it's examples. You can also use your own thing, but this is just to help you if you don't have documents in place already. Then there's a section 6, guide to the learner. That is where you will just describe general things that the learner needs to bring to the assessment to make sure that they're ready for the assessment. Section 7 will be the actual assessment tools that you need. So for example, there'll be a structured interview if you want to ask questions about the chicken feed to the learner, or there'll be a written knowledge assessment where the learner will have to answer questions. Section 8, that will be model answers. You don't have to include model answers or guide to the learner's response into your portfolio. It's not necessary. Just let me just backtrack a little bit and be clear. You as an assessor will probably have to get a guide like this. Somebody will have to say to you, this is the Astral assessment guide for how we're going to assess our 2 unit standards. So you won't be expected as an assessor to develop a guide like this from scratch. You will be given a pack of documents that you need to use. This is basically what this is. It's a pack of assessment documents to help you as a new assessor to do assessments. So I'm not going to ask of you to develop all these documents, and you will get these documents from somebody in Astral. But you will have to draw up your own assessment plan. You might be given a template where it says unit standard title blank, assessment tools to be used blank. But you will have to, at least for the purposes of this portfolio, show to me that you can develop an assessment plan. That module 3 that we've just gone through, the summary of the 14 steps is still up. That number 5, develop an assessment plan. You have to produce for me an assessment plan. And the basis of the assessment plan will be the unit standard that you choose to assess your 2 learners on. So for example, selecting appropriate chicken feed. Okay. I want to stop there, and I want you to turn to the actual section 4 of your assessment guide, the assessment plan. Sorry, Rian's just going to mute me for a second. Right, guys, what I want you to do now is a little exercise. I want you to look at that assessment plan in section 4, and I want you to think, and if you're on a group, talk to each other. If you're on your own, you can even WhatsApp me or phone me if you want, but think about how you're going to put together an assessment plan. Okay. Going to give you 10 minutes or so. Just talk in your groups how you're going to put together an assessment plan using a unit standard or a topic of your choice. Thanks. Guys, I hope you can hear me. While you're doing group work, it might be a bit easier if some of you feel you want to WhatsApp me or chat to me directly. You're welcome to do that. I should have actually thought of that before. While you're working in groups, I'm very happy to take WhatsApp calls or WhatsApp messages as well. It seems, you know, some of us, including me, sometimes the technology gets to, you know, when you raise your hands, it comes and goes all the time. So if you want to contact me directly, you are welcome to. Let me just give you my number. It is 083 299 5886. So you're welcome to WhatsApp me, and I will still answer the questions to the whole group, but if some individuals want to chat to me, by all means. Guys, I'm just putting the assessment plan up for you again, the slide. And I want you to, when you look at that plan, can you guys hear me? Can I just get a raised hand to see that you're with me? Okay, thanks. Remember, and if you're getting a bit confused, I'm not saying you are confused, but if you are getting a bit confused at the moment, we were going to spend a lot of time later in the groups as well. I see I'm already getting WhatsApp calls or WhatsApp messages. We're going to spend a lot of time in the smaller groups working on the details of this. So if you are feeling a little bit lost at the moment, please bear with me. We're going to, Nikki and I will have a session if possible this afternoon, just so that by tomorrow we can give you a little bit of an idea of how we're going to handle the small group part of this process. Remember, this is only the beginning, it's not the end, hey? And then we'll spend a lot of time in our individual groups looking at the different aspects of your portfolio. But for now, the assessment plan needs to include your unit standard of choice. which tools you're going to use, the logistics, and how you will get feedback. It's literally the whole process that you need to plan in advance. That's all it is. And you use the unit standard as the basis. So it's basically your unit standard plus your tools that you're going to be used, how you're going to use those tools, when and where you're going to use them, and how you will give feedback afterward. Those are the main aspects of that plan. Is dat live?
Melinda, I see Alan has a question.
Thank you. Alan? Alan, can you talk?
He's still on mute, so I'm not sure whether Rian unmutes him or he unmutes himself.
He looks like he's unmuted. Alan, can you hear us?
Or just responding to you when you ask someone raise their hand that we're back on.
Alan, I'm battling to hear you. Can you come a bit closer to your microphone, please?
I was just responding to your request. Can someone raise their hand to say that we're back online?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. Right. Can I get any, if you did have a chance to chat about the assessment plans in your groups, can I get any feedback about, do you think you'll be able to put together a plan? Remember, we're going to spend a lot of time in the smaller groups working on this as well, but I just wanted to give an initial chance for you guys to just sit together and look at an example of a plan and start thinking in your head how you're going to do this for real when you plan to do your assessment. I think what I also want to say, I must be honest, at the moment I'm finding this a bit difficult. You know, it's like I'm talking in a vacuum, and I think it's difficult for people also to know how to respond. I'm very happy afterwards to take as many phone calls, WhatsApp messages, emails. I prefer communication by email, I must say. But if you have any questions that you were maybe unsure how to raise in the big plenary session, please feel free to ask me questions afterwards. And that goes not only for today and tomorrow, it goes for this whole process. However long this process may take, if you sit in your group and you work on your portfolios, whether it's a formal session where I'm present or not, please at all times contact me. I'm available, and I have been for 24 years, 24/7. If I sleep, I don't answer my phone, but if you have a question, please ask me, phone me, email me. I'm there to support each and every one of the 114 of you. I promise you will get this done. All right, that's just an offer from my side. Okay, I think the 3 hours is getting a bit long today, so I'm going to see if there's any more questions about the assessment plan. And then I'm going to, after I've allowed questions, I'm going to do a final little theory session around module 4, the different tools to be used. There you can see how you work with the different tools as an assessor, and then that will be it until tomorrow. So final chance if anybody wants to say something or ask a question about the assessment plan. Otherwise, I'm going to step on to module 4. When do we have to submit our POEs? Ah, yes. When it's done, we'll set a date tomorrow. I promise. I'll have a discussion with Nikki and we'll set a date. Normally, we allow about 4 to 6 weeks after the formal training, but it will depend on how the small group works, because the idea is that I'm going to have small group sessions, at least 2 per group, to just assist you to work on your portfolios, but we still need to think how to best do those smaller sessions. It will be much more interactive. We'll do it with Zoom or WhatsApp. We'll schedule that and we'll talk about that tomorrow as well. Okay.
Melinda, just if I may just quickly interrupt for
Thank
a
you, Nikki.
second.
I was going to ask you to also provide some input there.
Okay, so I think the smaller groups, I'm just talking to all you guys out there, right? We had a planning meeting where I identified certain people that would be the go-to people to coordinate this whole group. So I think we'll stick to those people as being the contact people for Melinda, and those people will be responsible to arrange those little training sessions with her, like for the hour or whenever it's convenient for the entire group. But we'll keep our groups together. Like, for example, in commercial, we'll have County Fair, Epping, there can be one group. County Fair, Howcroft can be another group. Then County Fair, maybe the farms. I'm not sure, you guys can decide whether you want to keep the broilers together and the breeders together separately, or you want to do it as a combined effort. So I'm thinking about something like that. And like the feed mills together with Jacqueline, we can all combine. The commercial team can combine into one group. So when we have these one-on-one sessions, it may just be like 8 sessions that Melinda will have to plan. So you guys must also give some input as to whether you think that would work or not. But you can maybe send me an email, or we can set up a quick planning session, maybe later this afternoon or something for half an hour. What would work best?
Nikki?
Does that sound like it will work for you, Melinda?
Yeah, I was just thinking, if that's going to be difficult for everybody this afternoon, we can use some of tomorrow's time as well for that. You know, that you can maybe, you know, if you can't get together this afternoon, I'm happy to use that time for us to plan together tomorrow as part of the scheduled session as well, if it's going to make your job easier.
I think it would be, Melinda, because then we can just, I can maybe put together a quick slide where I think of how the group should be broken up. We can present it tomorrow, and then we can see if there's alignment, or I can even share it with everyone before tomorrow's meeting, and then they can give us some feedback on whether it will work like that or not.
Yes.
And then it would be easy to appoint a person responsible for that group, and you can liaise with them for when it's most convenient with the group to actually set up your sessions and for how long.
Yes, yes. We can then maybe, as you say, individually deal with a group, so that each group has a contact person, and then I arrange individually with you know, sessions with them. We can do it, and you're welcome to join on as many or as few of those small groups that you see fit.
Yeah, no, that'll be perfect.
Okay. Good, good.
All right then.
Can I then, and it might be premature, but if there's anybody who at this point want to ask questions or just give feedback on what you guys chatted about in your little groups about an assessment plan, and will you be able to put together an assessment plan. But this is actually what the small group sessions are going to be about, you know, to clarify all issues around that. We're going to talk to each other. It's not just going to be me talking. But if there's any initial thoughts about how you think you can put together an assessment plan, and remember, it can be group plans. One plan per unit standard, not one plan per learner on the course. Okay.
Melinda, sorry, I'm just going to speak on behalf of the guys from the County Fair Broiler team, because Madeleine just called me just a few seconds ago, because they don't have, for some reason, they're not able to speak. So I'm just speaking on behalf of her. So
Perfect.
what she suggested is that they do a training plan or an assessment plan around biosecurity, because that's the training that they usually do and they're familiar with. So she's got some ideas as to how she's going to put that in place. And what I did say to her, like you've just confirmed, is that we can have one assessment plan per group where everybody comes together and drafts it, and they can put that plan into their individual portfolios, and then choose 2 learners and provide evidence based on that interviews or whatever they do with them. So it doesn't have to be one plan per learner. They can do a collective plan.
Definitely, definitely.
Okay.
And I almost, Nikki, with your permission, I almost want to say, for the purposes of the portfolio, for practice, you guys can use whatever unit standard you can find online. I know that Astral only will use the 2 unit standards, and I will get those ID numbers for tomorrow's session, I promise. There will be 2 specific, but I really want to say to you that for the purposes of practicing for your portfolio, just do what we did this morning. Pick a topic. It doesn't have to be, strictly speaking, part of the induction training. Remember, this is a practice session. So pick a topic, find a unit standard loosely related to that, and play with it, you know. Get 2 guinea pigs, draw up a plan, assess them, just practice, because remember, learning must be fun as well. So part of this must at least be a little bit of fun, and when you have fun, you're learning as well. So this is the time to, in a protected environment, get your feet wet, you know, practice, play with unit standard, get used to the terminology, get used to the idea of drawing up a plan, and just come up, because it's not for real, you know. You're not going to do real assessments and award unit standards. This is just so that you can practice your new skills, and then you will be let loose as a formal assessor of Astral, and you will be working with specific unit standards. Nikki, are you happy with that kind of approach?
Melinda, I think yes and no. I say that because some learners on this course, obviously their learning agility differs. So I think in some groups it will be easy to do it the way you've suggested. But I think in other groups it may just be difficult, because I think the guys would struggle with time to be playing and then just to get the concepts reinforced. So I think for some groups it would be better if they chose something that is practical and that they will work with. So it's also a training session, if you can get what I mean.
Yes.
It will enhance the learning and make it go forward quicker. Because some people, yes, the playing and stuff would come easy. They'd be able to do that and evaluate other unit standards and stuff. But other groups may find that a bit difficult. So I think like what we should do is give them an option. Like Madeleine chose to do the biosecurity, and I think that's good. She can go ahead with that. So I think they can, depending on the learning agility, they can choose one of the 2 options that you've suggested.
All right. All right. We have 2 options now. I want to introduce you to module 4, but before I do that, I just want to try and get some feedback from individuals to see if there's a basic understanding about the assessment plan. I don't want to move forward if people are not more or less comfortable with the idea that you'll have to put together an assessment plan using some content that you're going to be assessing. Is it at all possible to get brief feedback from the groups? Maybe if one person from each of the major areas like festive, country fair, can maybe just talk to me a tiny bit and see, are you clear, or are you starting to get clear about the concept of an assessment plan, or is it still very vague to you?
Okay, so to help you, Melinda, I think I'll just call out the
Okay.
names and the guys can actually help you. Okay, so the guys from County Fair Broiler, we've just got their feedback because they're having a problem with sound. Okay, so
Okay.
Madeleine, I think they're on the right track. I can forward you snippets of their conversation as well. You can have a look at it for later. That's fine, right? So if we go, let's choose County Fair breeders. So maybe Francois, if you want to give us some feedback, please. I'll just give them a minute. Yeah, his hand's up. So yeah, maybe can he unmute himself, or does Rian have to unmute him?
He can unmute himself.
Yes, Nikki, I
Perfect,
think we're
thanks.
basically on the same. We're basically on the same track as the broiler team. Basically going to use the reinforced biosecurity training as the project for this purpose. I've also Googled a bit for unit standards that we might be able to use, and there's quite a few nice ones. That includes manage the care of poultry parent stock. I think that we will be able to use that one as it is basically. So, and manage the poultry production facility. So then we have a decent or a actual unit standard that we can use, and then prepare the plan from there.
That sounds good.
Okay, so you're happy with that, Melinda? I think it also sounds good.
Yes, no,
Francois, thank
definitely.
you.
It's definitely on the right track. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So then we're going to go to Goldie. Let's do the breeder team from Standerton, the guys from Standerton. Dagi, Fran, or Temba, do you want to give some feedback?
Francois?
No, it'll be Dagi, or I see Dagi's on. Dagi, do you want to give some feedback about the broiler guys in Goldie? I'll just give him a minute. Oh dear. Anyone from Standerton? Here, Dougie's got his hand up, so yeah.
Yeah, I was just muted. So, Nika was saying...
Were you having an intelligent conversation with yourself?
With myself, yeah. Okay, I think there's also a registered unit standard for actually setting up a broiler house that we can use as our unit standard. So I think it's always something that we can use in future as well. So I think it's a topic we can use in our plan.
Melinda, you must just see if you are happy with that, or you want to
no,
ask a
definitely.
question.
Sorry, yeah, no, absolutely. You know, it doesn't matter, as I say, and we can have this discussion. You know, one has to have a balance, I guess, between using the official things that you will use in Astral, and just making sure that the concepts are, you know, as a training concept, you know. So if people want to play around with unit standards, for me personally, I don't have a problem with this, but it might be better, you know, for the process that people just use the ones that are officially selected by Astral. But the whole idea is to understand that a unit standard it's a tool that you have to assist you. It's not something that should guide your whole practice. You know, your company objectives and plan is, you call it a plan task observation?
Yep, a planned
Yeah,
task or a
those
planned
are
job
the, you know,
application.
your organizational goals need to drive this process. The process doesn't need to drive you. And it's important to make it work. It's about the company. It's not about the NQF. The NQF is a tool to assist, and assessment is a tool to give people credit, but credit for things that will improve company bottom line. That's what one needs to remember.
Okay. I think that makes sense, Melinda. So maybe we can ask the team from Ross. Can Beauty give us some feedback? I'll just have to give them a minute. Let me see if she's on here.
Alan?
There's Pendulani also has his
Yeah,
hand up, but we can,
Pendulani.
yeah, we can go with Alan.
Alan?
Oh, there's,
Okay, sorry, Pendulani is live.
yep, go for it, Pendulani. He's a Ross team member.
Excuse
He
me.
just needs to be unmuted.
Yeah.
You just need
Can
to
you hear?
unmute yourself. Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, at Ross team, what we were thinking about, we were thinking about to choose the handling of live vaccinations in poultry. We've tried and checked, Googled as well. We found the registered unit standard. So at the moment, it looks like we are on the right track, and we've some ideas to put it together.
Well done. Thank you.
Right.
Okay.
So, yeah, thank you, Pendulani. Well done. That's a great idea. Let's just choose National Trick. Since Alan's hand is raised, maybe we should give them a chance.
Hi, Nikki.
Hi, Alan.
Hi. We've got four of us here, Chinus, and Lucas, and Isabel, and myself. I think what we're going to do is Chinus and Lucas will be focusing on something on the rearing and the laying. And on Isabella and myself, we'll do a topic on preparing of vaccine and application, and then the other one, Isabella will do grading of eggs. If we look at the material that we're going through now, it's pretty straightforward, and we just follow the guidelines. So I don't think we should have a problem putting the plan together.
Okay, that's great. So can we then move across to Tamara and Riche at Ross in Turtle Springs, just to see if you're still there?
Die krag het afgegaan by standaard toe. So ja, dis tot nie.
Nikki?
Yes.
Rian says power has gone at Standerton. I know load shedding is scheduled to start at 12. So I'm wondering if we're not starting to lose people.
Yeah, I know the guys in Standerton are back on. Tamara's in Ross, but I see she's still on there.
Good.
As long as she's, yeah, she's got a hand up. So maybe if she
Okay.
just,
Tamara, do you want to talk?
if she can unmute herself, or yeah, there she goes.
Tamara?
Can you hear me?
Hi.
Yes, Riche, we can hear you. Go for it.
Hi, Nikki.
Hi.
We have been thinking about, because we've got 3 different departments in Ross Cape. We've got hatchery, rearing, and laying. We were also thinking, like Pendulani just mentioned, the vaccination part of it, because now you can do the assessment plan practically and theoretically on the vaccination part of it, and it's best for hatchery, rearing, and laying, because it's one unit standard that you're doing, but you're doing it in different ways. So that was what we were discussed in Ross Cape. Our assessment would be vaccination of day-old chicks to the bird and work it from there.
Okay, I think that's a great idea too.
Yes.
Well done. Yeah. Melinda, do you want to choose a few more, or do you want to carry on? I see we have 6 minutes left,
Yeah,
but I
you
think the
know,
guys seem to be on the right track.
I think they seem to be on the right track. I was just thinking I'm going to revise a little bit what I wanted to do now. I'm not going to try, I wanted to do an exercise with module 4, the assessment tools, but I think what I'd like to do, if at all possible, and we can do it sort of the first 15 minutes of tomorrow's session. I need some help in planning here, but there are 9 pages in module 4 full of assessment tools. All the different, I like to call it like, you know, a plumber has a toolkit, an assessor has a toolbox full of assessment tools, full of different ways of how you can actually assess learners. And I'd like us to actually talk about which of those tools will work for which of the unit standards, for which of the sections in the company. So I'd like to do an exercise around that, and I'd like to start with that tomorrow morning. But in terms of the logistics, I need some help as to how you guys know who of you are together. What I normally do when I train is I say there are 9 pages of tools, and I divide the group in, or I say pick 3 groups, and each group pick 3 pages, look at the assessment tools on those pages, and then pick one and then give feedback to the plenary. Tell us which one you thought will work very well to assess your specific unit standard. For example, the day-old chicken, you know, which tool would work well and why, and then which tool will not work so well and also why. And then as a third option, I say pick a tool that you actually not very familiar with, but that you find interesting and that you think you would like to try and would work in your company. So I would like us to do an exercise around the tools, but logistically, I'm not 100% sure how to divide the groups. Maybe we should just look at who's physically together. And each of those people who are physically together, pick 3 pages. They start on page, let me see here. They start on page 8 or page 9 of module 4. So one group or 2 groups pick page 9, 10, 11, and then 12, 13, 14, and 15, 16, and 17. So in groups, you look at the tools on those 3 pages. You decide which one you like, why, which one you don't like, why. And then a third option is one that is quite new to you, that you may be not used to, but you would like to actually use that. Maybe if I can get some guidance from Nikki or from anybody, how can we do an exercise like that tomorrow morning?
Oh, I'm just looking at the assessor sheet that we put together. And I'm just trying to see which groups are sitting together. So there's the agricultural group at County Fair. So there's broilers and breeders. So there's 2 groups there. There's commercial, that's another 2 groups. So you've got 4 groups there. Festive's got 2 groups. So that's 6. Goalie, probably that's 1 group. That's 7. Then we can put Ross together. That's 8. National Chicks can work together. Both Gauteng and KZN, because they can dial in as well, isn't that so? They don't have to be sitting next to each other.
Yeah, I just want to, I want us to get talking in the groups as well, so that they, and it doesn't matter if there are, you know, as long as all 9 pages get covered. I just like to generate a little bit of discussion and sort of starting to link the actual different tools to the reality of what's going to happen. Can we try that tomorrow morning as a starter? And then maybe people can just read through the tools this afternoon to familiarize yourself with some of the things and to see what you're used to, what's new, and then we try and have a little discussion in the groups to start tomorrow morning, and then some feedback.
Yeah, I think that will work, Melinda. So all of us read it tomorrow morning. Instead of the guys getting together at 9, they can get together a few minutes earlier and discuss it.
Yes.
And then give you some feedback. Yeah.
Good. So we, I see it's 12 o'clock. So we'll start at 9 o'clock tomorrow in groups. There'll be no plenary session. I will be available on my phone, so you can phone me or WhatsApp me if there's unsurety. And then you spend probably half an hour in your groups, and then we get together as a plenary with feedback at 9:30. Does that sound like a plan? Okay. Good. Thank you very much.
But you still on, sorry, Melinda, you're still on till 12:30 for any questions, isn't it?
I was just going to say,
Okay.
I was just going to say officially, if people need to leave, it's now over. Officially, load shedding start. We're not scheduled for load shedding today, but I'm very happy, and it starts now. And it carries on when the last person is competent. I'm available on my phone. I'll sit here, you know, on the session until 12:30. But please treat me like I am your facilitator and you are my learners. I know I can't see you, and there's many of you, but I don't mind 114 phone calls, I promised you, or 114 emails. If you want to discuss something with me, if you want to ask me something, clarify, that's my job. That's what I'm really good at. To talk to you and to explain to you if you ask me a question. I must say, I find today this, I feel like I'm talking into a vacuum. I'm sure I'll get used to it, but you know, please contact me. My number is on the front of the file. It's 083 299 5886. My email address is also there, melinda@lpl. Please communicate with me if you want to have any clarification, if you want to check something. This is new for everybody, I know, you know, so you're scared. I was scared of an evidence matrix probably for 4 years until I really understood that it's just a list, you know. So if there's anything that you're unsure of, please ask me, please contact me. WhatsApp, email, phone, I'm here for you. That's my job. Okay. So right, I'm still going to be on until 12:30, but you can start calling me now already. Oh, here's a question. Okay. Please repeat what exactly you want us to do in a group for tomorrow's lesson. Okay, perfect. You're going to pick 3 pages. We'll divide the groups. If we have to, if groups can't divide on their own, contact me, and between Nikki and me, we'll get you into groups. I want you to talk about the 3 pages that you've chosen. So one group will choose, or 1 or 2 groups, it doesn't matter how many groups there are. You'll pick 3 pages, either the first 3 or the middle 3 or the end, those tools, the tables in module 4 of your file, and you will just read through the tools for starters. You will see what they are. For example, I'm just looking here at the tools on page 9. It says on the job performance, on the job product development, and then there's simulation of performance and simulation of product development. Now, product development will be country fairs, frozen chicken breasts, for example. On the job performance will be feeding the chickens, for example. And just look at those tools. Look at the first 2 columns, the features and the advantages. familiarize yourself with the tools on your 3 pages. And then you talk in your group or your virtual groups about which of these tools will work for us in ROS, for example. We can do simulation of performance because we need to hatch the eggs. So before we hatch real eggs, we can test temperatures using rocks or whatever. Just see which of the tools, or you can remember these are assessment tools, you think will work to assess your learners, which won't, and which you find new and interesting. Those are the 3 questions that you will ask yourselves of the tools on your 3 pages. Nikki, was that clear?
I think for me, yes. Maybe we just ask Pendulani, are you okay with that? Are you comfortable with what needs to happen? Let's just wait for him to type an answer, and then we know that he knows.
Remember, guys, my offer about the phone calls and the emails has started, what, 10 minutes ago, 5 minutes ago? You're welcome today to start phoning me and asking me. If you're unsure of anything, please make use of the offer. Please phone me, please WhatsApp me, please email me. Don't think you only have the 3 hours and then the time when your group sessions happen. I am at your disposal starting last Wednesday, 24/7, unless my phone is off, until you guys are all competent. That's my goal. There's a lot of you, 114 is a lot, but I promise you 114 competent assessors. If you want to be competent, you will be, and that's my job. All right, so please ask any questions, and it goes until the end of the project. Don't feel you're going to abuse me or waste my time. I'm here 24/7 within reason. Okay.
Pendulani's happy, so I guess he's clear on what's required tomorrow. Okay.
Excellent. Right. Is there anybody who wants to still ask questions? Any questions, clarification, or otherwise of the good in the big group? Otherwise, I'm going to stop the session from my side, but I'm not stop. I'll just stop interacting other than when I get raised hands from people. All right.
Thank you, Melinda.
Formally, this is it until tomorrow morning. Remember, at 9 o'clock, we're going to try to get you into your group. So if you don't join, we will assume that you are in a group working. Nikki, does that sound logistically doable?
Yeah, I think that should be fine.
Yeah, okay. So if you don't join, we assume that you're in a group and working. And remember, you can phone me during that time or WhatsApp me. But then if everybody can join or be joined by 9:30, and then we start with feedback. Okay. Thank you very much then. Until tomorrow morning at 9 or 9:30.
Thank you, Melinda.
Thank
you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.